Good afternoon. I'm Danny Rubin, the founder of Rubin. We are a provider of online curriculum for business communication skills. I often ask this question at the start of our session so folks know what we're all about. Teachers, raise your hand if your students ever send you emails that look like text messages. You ever get emails that look like texts? Any hands for that? I'm seeing some hands. So even our guest gets emails like that from her students. So we help students to communicate effectively for college and career opportunities. Emails, phone, conversation skills, lots of different ways to go out there and make something happen. And we have a great conversation today for our next installment of our virtual internship series, all about the world of sports medicine, with our special guest, Ms. Jana Katz from Bishop Ireton High School in Northern Virginia. Grateful for her, and we'll get to that conversation in just a moment. We have Mr. Peter Dublin here providing sign language services for those who need it. And we have Alexis from the Rubin team. She will be hanging out in the chat, answering questions as they come up. And actually, I forgot to say before, Alexis, if you could please share the link to our worksheet in the chat right now. For those who have not received it yet, we put out a worksheet ahead of our session. You're welcome to get it out of the chat, download the Word doc, and use it to follow along in the conversation. Okay, thank you, Alexis. And you can click off your camera and we'll see you in the chat. All right, so before we dive into our conversation, we're going to start with some announcements for teachers, some upcoming events, things that we want you to know, and then we will get into our conversation. Moment. All right. Those of you who are new, who have been here before, you know that we like to give things away. Free stuff, free material. Let's take the conversation today, take it further in the classroom. And if you don't have this resource folder yet, please get it from us today. We put together a Google Doc of 5 free exercises for how to handle failure. Teachers, show of hands, you want to help students to handle failure. You think that when they do something wrong, they fall apart. You want to help them to push through those moments. So we have a Google Drive of free exercises for how to respond when you don't land the internship or job, how to reply in an email when someone doesn't answer you the first time, how to ask someone for honest feedback on your work, your skills, your talents, how to tell your story of overcoming obstacles, your story of resilience in cover letters, and how to improve how you look in the eyes of others, specifically with your public speaking. If you would like these resources, you don't have them yet, I will tell you in a moment how to get them. We also always like to give out, since we're in this virtual age, COVID age, where virtual presentations are just a reality forever, a free checklist on how to prepare for effective online presentations. Before, during, what to say, how to position yourself, how to get ready, a quick one sheet of advice. If you don't have these resources and you would like them from us, here's how we like to do it so we can get to know you. Type the word interested right now in the chat with your email address. Interested and your email address. If you are new to the Rubin community, we like to have a brief phone call in the next day or so to get to know what you teach and help you make sense of this content in your classroom. So if you're new to us, we will send you a Google invite for a brief 5-minute call, pass it along so you have what you need. And you can share that not only in your classroom, but also with other teachers in your building. We want to make this a resource that everybody can access. So please let us know and we will be in touch to pass that along as soon as possible. So you're welcome to do that. And I'll keep moving through so that we can get to our special guest. But continue to request the material if you'd like. Coming up in 2 weeks' time, for those of you who are new to us, we do our virtual internship series every 2 weeks. Next week, or in 2 weeks, on the 23rd of February, the world of dentistry with Dr. Daniel Visendak, who is a dentist, and he also owns his own practice. So we're going to learn about running a business and working on people's teeth simultaneously, 12:30 Eastern on February 23rd. You'll see emails about that shortly, so please join us if that aligns with your schedule. And of course, we always put it on YouTube. And to that point, if you're going to watch today's session as a recording, if you're watching this in the future, please, you can still have the resources. Go to your email and send us an email with that subject line below and the email address in red, and we will send you the resources that way. Okay, so you can still have what we're giving out today, even if you're not here live. And finally, everyone here today live with us, teachers and students, on Wednesday morning, okay, we will send you a certificate for being here. So look out for that Wednesday morning. You can customize it and add your students' names to it. So wait for it from us Wednesday morning and use it any way you'd like. Okay, so with that said, what I'm going to do now is turn off the share and bring in our special guest, Miss Jana Katz. Thank you very, very much for being here and your busy day. You're in the busy winter into spring sort of sports schedule. Thanks for making time for us. Tell us your background, how you briefly kind of the steps, how you got to this job and what you do in your job every day.
Hi, so how I got here, I went to college at Ithaca College, and at that time, I was able to sit for my certification exam the spring of my senior year. So I became certified as I graduated from college. And after that, I went to grad school, did some grad work. It wasn't the right fit for me. From there, I went to a physical therapy company, and I worked there both in the clinic and with the school. From there, I went to a public high school in the Northern Virginia area, and from there, I'm now at Bishop Ireton High School. As an athletic trainer, I'm an allied healthcare provider who specializes in the prevention, emergency care, diagnosis, and rehabilitation of athletic injuries. So the whole life cycle of an injury.
Wonderful. And we're going to get into kind of your day-to-day in just a minute. As we get into that conversation, I would encourage the teachers and students to please go to the Q&A area along the bottom row of Zoom and start entering your own questions. We will pull those questions as we go along. As you leave your question, please put your name and your school so we can give you proper credit when we ask the question. So please start putting your questions for Ms. Katz in the Q&A. We will be asking questions from that area in just a few minutes. So for those of you who have been to our sessions before, there is an R word that we always talk about at the start of conversations. Who knows what word I'm talking about? What do we always do to show our guests we are prepared for the conversation? Who knows that word? Anybody know that word, that R word? Those of you who have been here before, if not, I'll give it away in just a moment, but I want to show you. There you go. Thank you, Jenny. We do, oh, respect is good too. That is another R word, and I will allow it. You get credit as well. We're talking about research. We always research our guests and where they work and what they do before we bring them on, to underscore why it's so important when you have an interview for yourself, an internship, a scholarship, a job, to research the person you're talking to research the company or organization, because it shows that you really care. You took your time. Okay, and I see a question in the chat. Please start putting your questions in the Q&A, not in the chat. The chat goes fast and we lose it, okay? So put your questions in the Q&A. So what I did, very simply, is I went to the Bishop Ireton High website, and I read about their athletics and sports medicine operation. And one thing that I was so blown away about is the number of sports that Bishop Ireton offers. It's there's a lot going on athletically at one high school. So my first question to Ms. Katz is 19 sports, and ice hockey, swimming, look, all different surfaces and facilities. Is it kind of a crazy zoo in your office throughout the semesters because there's so many students playing so many sports? What is it like in your corner of the building?
So it definitely can get a little bit crazy. A lot of the sports you just mentioned happen to all be off campus. We don't have a swimming pool on campus. We don't have a hockey rink on campus. So a lot of those sports are actually off campus. So we don't get them necessarily in our, what we'd call like the after school rush of everyone trying to get in, get it before practice. But luckily there's two athletic trainers. There's me and the head athletic trainer. So between the two of us, we usually have a handle on everything.
So take us through a normal day. Like, what does it look like for you when you get to school or before school, through the day, afternoon? like to give us a snapshot of one of your days.
So I would say my days vary a lot. The basic outline of it will vary by the season that we're in, the athletic season we're in. For the current season, I usually get to work around noon. And then I spend noon to the end of school, usually doing paperwork, catching up on my documentation, my treatment notes or my injury notes. I usually check in with our school nurses because we share patients. Anything else that kind of might need to be done. I also sometimes have kids who are in study hall and need to do some rehab. They might come in during that time.
Okay, go ahead, keep going,
Yeah.
sorry.
And then after school, me and the head athletic trainer have a rough divide of our sports. So the main sport I cover in the building is wrestling, and they don't practice until later in the day. So I have a couple hours of rehab, more administrative stuff, and then wrestling will come in and we'll be at wrestling practice.
So give us a sense of some of the work that you do with student athletes. What are some things you're treating? Like what when they come in to see you, what are some of the most common treatments or procedures that you're doing?
Yeah, I'd say probably the most common thing we do is taping ankles for ankle sprains, both really as they're returning to play and getting back into playing, and to give them a little bit more support. Probably the most common thing we do. Ankle sprains in general are pretty common across all sports. Something to manage. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. We have some questions. We have some good questions coming in our chat. So thank you very much. I'm just going to look down our list here. We have Cindy from Cedar Lane School. She said, what was your college degree and what certification did you get at the end of college, or did the certification come later? So start with your degree and then any certifications.
So my disclaimer before I answer this is that the educational requirements to become an athletic trainer have changed since I was in school.
Okay.
So my experience is not what you guys as high school students.
Then you can also tell us what you did and also what's some of the things that are required today that you might know. You can tell us both.
So for me, I got my bachelor's of science in athletic training. And the spring of my senior year, I was able to sit for our board of certification exam, which is the national athletic training certification exam. So after I passed that exam and graduated college, I became a certified athletic trainer. Nowadays, you have to get your master's degree to be able to sit for your certification.
Oh, wow.
So you can't sit for your exam until your final semester of your master's program. I know that some good bachelor's programs for that are an exercise science type program where you have that basis in learning about the science of exercise.
So what kind of master's degree do you need? What is it? A master's of what?
It'll be a master's in athletic training.
A master's of, do all schools typically, like colleges, offer that, or only certain schools offer that? Like, is that just everywhere?
I'm not 100% sure with the master's program switch. Not every school offers it. Most schools will have some sort of exercise science program, but not necessarily the athletic training component of it.
Okay. Let me ask the students. We always want to kind of touch base with students, make sure we're hearing it. She said, not only do you need a bachelor's degree today, you also need a what? What was that M word? You also need a what kind of degree before you can sit for your certification? Thank you, Trevin. A master's degree. So this is important information. This is really, we want to be very practical in our sessions and just give you the playbook of how to go and accomplish these different career fields. So that's a big detail to know as you start to pursue this job. A question from Lacey Hodges, is that Tucker High School in Richmond, by the way, Lacey? Is that Tucker in Richmond, Virginia? I'll explain why in a minute. She said, do public high schools also have athletic trainers?
I forget the exact number off the top of my head. I believe it's around 80% of all high schools in the country have an athletic trainer, at least part-time on staff. A good majority of schools, private, public, will have an athletic trainer, at least they're part of the time.
Okay, so there you go. By the way, I asked about Tucker. Would you believe that my dad went to Tucker High School in about 1968, 70, something like that. So how about that for a connection? He's from Richmond, Virginia, the capital of Virginia. So we have a question from Nick, Carson High School. What kind of clinical experiences did you encounter in college that influenced you to go into athletic training? Did you always know you wanted to do athletic training, or did you kind of get inspired to do it?
So I was kind of interested in the injury process. I grew up dancing and had been injured. And then in high school, my school offered an anatomy and sports injury class that was taught by my school's athletic trainer. And that was when it kind of clicked for me that, oh, this just makes sense. This is the first subject that was easy to learn for me.
Okay, nice. Question from Tiana Griffin. What sports do you deal with more than others? Like which ones have the most injuries or the needs? Where's the greatest demand across the sports that you help with?
Whatever's in season at the moment.
They all have injuries.
They all have injuries. They all have needs. But yeah, and we see the on-campus sports more, so we hear more about their injuries. They're around more. But really, it's whatever sports in season is the one has the most going on.
And it's oftentimes it's the ankle. You're just
oftentimes the ankle.
Okay. Yeah. Seth from Oak Hills High, California says, during high school, what other careers were you looking at? Were you kind of in the healthcare space, or where was your head then?
I'd say the other thing I was looking at was physical therapy, because there's a lot of overlap in terms of the rehabilitation aspect. So it was really physical therapy, and I didn't really know about athletic training until I took that anatomy and sports injury class in high school.
Okay. We have another good question from Tucker High School, Tucker Tigers. Where else, from Jasmine, where else could you work besides a high school or a gym? Are there other places where athletic trainers work?
Yeah, so this is actually really cool. There's a lot of cool, what we call settings of where athletic trainers can work outside of what we'd consider the traditional school setting. There are things like, we call it the industrial setting, which is usually factories. Amazon employs athletic trainers to help workers healthy and able to work. There's also performing arts. Cirque du Soleil has athletic trainers. The military is a really big employer of athletic trainers. You either being with a specific troop or just kind of doing general boot camp type stuff.
Wow.
And there's also like doctor's offices or physical therapist offices.
Jasmine, excellent question, because I think it opens up a whole world that maybe many of us weren't even thinking about. So just for an example, like let's say there's a trainer at Amazon in a factory setting. What are they doing day to day? Are they waiting for people to come with injuries? Are they doing preventative outreach? What does that job look like? I know you're not in it, but do you have a sense?
My sense is there's some preventative component, and then it's also helping with injuries that they might have gotten on the job. There's a lot of repetitive chronic injuries that you'll get from that kind of field. So helping the staff manage that and stay healthy while they do this motion.
Raise your hand if you found that interesting. I never would have thought that there were athletic trainers in like factory settings, corporate settings. That again, we're trying to really help students understand the job today. And these are some really good tidbits. Question from Tyler Schaefer. How long did you go to school?
So because grad school, getting my master's wasn't a great fit for me. I did 4 years of college, and then I did roughly 2 years of a master's program. Okay. But I was certified athletic trainer after my 4 years of undergraduate.
Okay. But as you said, the rules have changed a little bit, but that's been your experience. I'm a little hesitant to ask this question. Maybe you can keep it PG. What is the most serious injury you've seen? Tamar Vega asked that question.
This is a common question. I'd say I have a uncommon response. I'd say the worst injuries I've experienced are being with athletes when they find out really bad news. There's been several times where I've been with athletes when my athletes have found out something really traumatic. And I would say those have been the most difficult experience. My professional
like when you say, this is going to be like a year-long recovery or some like really dramatic news, like you're not going to heal up quick from this, or you might never be the same after this, or
that and worse stuff.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. That's a good answer. I mean, I'm not what I expected, but fair. Yeah. Brooke Vanish from Temescal Canyon High School, California says, what is the most challenging aspect of your job?
Challenging aspect, probably the hours. I work very non-traditional hours because that's when sports happen in schools. For example, last week, I've been working Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 6 a.m. basketball practices. And then so I go from a Thursday, 6 a.m. I usually go back to sleep after, but it's still an early morning, to Friday night. I had a hockey game that ended at 10:30 p.m. So kind of the bounce around of schedules, and not usually being free when most other people are free to hang out or get dinner.
Is very unconventional schedule. Do you particularly enjoy sports? Do you enjoy the science of sports? Do you get into the games, or are you just there to work? Like, how does that work? You're watching sports all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I love sports. I love the science of it. It's fascinating. It's interesting. I wouldn't say I watch sports in my own time that much.
Yeah, I mean, you need to get away from it.
Yeah. But during games and stuff, I'm both watching the game, but I'm really watching bodies to get a general overview of kind of what's going on and seeing
Sure. Right.
like the whole rink, the whole court, things like that.
Yeah, you say that you're interested in the science of sports. Can you, on the spot, like, is there one aspect of the science of sports that you find interesting you could share with the group, like something that you find fascinating or you're always looking out for?
Yeah, I find rehabilitation really exciting and interesting and fascinating. Figuring out both how to rehab an injury, but also do a sports specific rehab. So figuring out what can I do to replicate something that this athlete will experience as they go back to their sport, and how can I replicate that in a controlled environment is fun and interesting, and it's a really fascinating area of study.
Thank you. And I want to just call out to the students what I just did there. So just in the flow of what she was saying, she said, I'm fascinated by the science of sports. So I put that in the back of my mind, and when she was finished with her previous answer, I asked a follow-up question. So she said something that she showed she was very interested in talking about. So then I asked her to tell me more about it. So when we're meeting new people and they say something like, I just had the best weekend ever, what should we say to that person? If someone says, I just had such an awesome weekend, tell me in the chat, what would you say to somebody? They said, I just had the most fun weekend ever. What would you say to that person next? Can someone give me an idea? What question might you ask them in the chat? Tell me that. Because we want to learn to use our listening skills and let people tell us what they want to share with us. The more they talk to us, the more engaging and valued they feel. So thank you. What made it so fun? What did you do? Tell me more. Exactly. So as we're talking to people, we listen for cues, and then we have follow-ups to let them take the conversation further. Raise your hand if you understand what we just did. Raise your hand if this makes sense. We're learning soft skills, interpersonal skills, while learning about sports medicine. And that's what these sessions are all about. Really good question here from Giselle Glover, North Mech, Charlotte, North Carolina. What do you suggest I do in order to shadow or intern with a physical therapist as a high school junior? How do you get started in high school?
So most athletic trainers, physical therapists are really happy to have someone shadow them. You know, we want to encourage people to, you know, have interest in the profession. It's a little bit more difficult with COVID because we want to limit numbers. But really, if you just email someone in a professional manner asking, I would really interested in this, I would love to be able to shadow you. Is that something possible? And most will say yes if their institution's COVID policies will allow it.
And which, again, listening closely for cues, right? She said, you need to reach out, send them a message, right? So a lot of what we talk about at our company is email etiquette, professionalism. And for those who requested our free resources for handling failure, we have some sample email templates to refer to. So we'll mention it again at the end because we give out lots and lots of examples so you know how to write these messages. Because it's one thing for Ms. Katz to say, well, just go, you know, reach out to that sports medicine facility, you know, down the street. And the student said, well, how do I do that? Right? Well, how do I ask them appropriately? So these are the questions that come up. And I'm glad that you started that conversation to get them thinking about holding that conversation, writing that email. Question here from Kia. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Desart High School in Arizona. When you make a medical mistake, how do you recover from it? How do you fix what you may have done incorrectly? Does that ever happen to you?
Yeah, and I think it's important to acknowledge that you made a mistake. tell the athlete, hey, do you know what, I got it wrong. Or even say, hey, I'm not sure what's going on. And that's when, as an athletic trainer, I can refer someone to a doctor or someone with more education than me. But I think being able to admit that you made a mistake is really valuable, and it will actually build trust between you and your athletes.
Thank you very much for that. We've had this question many times, so I'll ask it sort of collectively. People are asking about salary ranges. Are you comfortable explaining just general ranges at different levels of experience or starting salary? Can you give us a little bit of that?
I can talk a little bit about high school salaries.
Sure, go ahead and do that.
You're not going to make a lot of money as an athletic trainer. I guess there's two ways that athletic trainers are employed at high schools. One is directly by the school or by the district, and one is usually what we call outreach. So they're employed by like a physical therapy company, and through the physical therapy company, they work at a school. So for people who are employed directly by the school, a lot of times we are on the same teacher scale. So kind of as a teacher would be paid would be about what the athletic trainer is paid.
Okay, thank you for that. We have a question that's come up a few times. I'll try to bring it all together. We have Jenny Carr ask the question. Yet another Tucker Tiger asking the question. Are there jobs in this space you can do if you don't have a college degree? Can you work without that degree? What can you do?
I'd say in terms of at a school, there will be less in that space. I know physical therapy assistants, that is not a 4-year degree, to be able to work in a physical therapy office, kind of do similar things. But yeah, kind of at the school level, it's a little bit more difficult.
Okay, that's fair answer. Bruno from Desert Mirage High School. Hey there to Desert Mirage. What are the odds of someone getting a job in the field of athletic training? Is it competitive or easy to find a job?
I would say it probably depends on where you live. Where I live in Northern Virginia, there's a saturation of athletic trainers. It's a popular place to work. But on the other hand, I live in an area where there's a lot of new areas that athletic trainers are working, like our local fire department has athletic trainers. But also not every high school has an athletic trainer. So there's definitely schools available. If you don't want to work at the high school level, it might be a little bit more competitive. The bigger Division I schools, it'll be a little bit more competitive, things like that.
That actually came up. I wanted to ask you too. So do you have friends who work at the college level, D1, D2, D3? Like, what is that experience like? Is it more intense? Is it more time consuming? Is there more travel? Like, give us an example of someone I'm assuming you know someone through your schooling, like as operating at the college level. Like, what is that life like?
Yeah. Well, so I experienced that a little bit in grad school. So at the college, instead of having all of like the school's sports, you're generally responsible for 1 or 2 sports. So it's a lot more focused on what you're doing. You might have, 1 sport each season, much more focused, but there's a lot more time involved because you don't know when practices are going to be. You're scheduling around the student's schedule to have rehabs. You're traveling with them, and traveling takes a lot of time. So it's both different and the same, and a little bit more kind of focused in on one sport or so.
That's good to know. I asked you about this before we started. I want to rattle off a few sports that you oversee and just have you tell me like the most common. I know a lot of it's ankles. Maybe you can go one step beyond ankles. Tell us like what comes to mind when you think about certain sports that Bishop Ireton offers. So let's just try a few and see how far we get. So let's start with football, for example. When football season's in full swing, like what is coming your way?
Oh, football. Football really brings the whole range of things. But concussions are something that you hear a lot about in the media in relation to football. And a lot of just, little things, a lot of ankle sprains, a couple knee sprains.
Getting banged up. Let's go to cross country.
Yeah. So cross country will get a lot of overuse injuries. So in their knees and their feet, because they're doing a repetitive motion the whole time. So that
makes sense.
Problems. Yeah.
Swimming and diving.
Swimming has a lot of shoulder injuries. again, the repetitive motion of what they're doing, they get those overuse injuries.
Okay.
Diving will be a little bit more dramatic if they get hurt. They also have a lot of wrist problems because they hit the water like this. So they'll have wrist issues, things like that.
Okay. How about, oh, there's so many to choose from. Cheerleading.
Cheerleading. When I think of cheerleading, I think of the worst case scenario. Cheerleading puts people really high in the air. There's a high risk of, or there's not a high risk, there's a risk of a catastrophic injury.
Oh, right.
Catastrophic injury.
That's something like serious. You could land on your head. You could break something, like something could go terribly wrong. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do a couple more here. I find this interesting. How about, let's do golf. What are there injuries with golf? It seems like a nice casual sport.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there are many golf injuries that I've seen. A lot of times it's golfers who have injuries from outside of golf.
Okay.
But again, it's a lot of the repetitive motion. Sometimes it might be a technical issue that they need to fix in their swing.
Okay. And lastly, and you were already talking about it because this is something in front of you now, wrestling. What comes up in wrestling?
Yeah. So wrestling, we mostly deal with blood. They scratch each other, they hit each other in the nose. There's a lot of blood involved.
A lot of blood. Okay.
A lot of blood. Yeah.
Any students out there afraid of blood? So there may be blood. If you go into this field, you might come, maybe not every day, but some days, right? It's going to happen when you're out there treating injuries. So we're going to take, Ms. Katz, stay with us. We're going to we're going to do a quick screen share. And we always like to try to introduce a writing skill lesson. As you see in our sessions, if you're new to us, it's a mix of career development and employability skills and learning about jobs and learning how to communicate on jobs. So I'm going to show you a quick screen share. Okay. And we're going to talk for a second about texting and how the text language does not belong in the professional environment. But let's say that you are going after an internship or a job and the employer sends you a text like this. Are you still able to make the job interview on Tuesday at 11? What I'd like for you to do is go to the chat, please. Students, how would you respond? Let's say they're texting you. The email looks like this or the text message looks like this, regardless of the device or platform you're on. Can you show me an appropriate response with proper grammar and sentence structure to this question? Show me in the chat, how would you respond to this person, regardless of how they're writing to you, how casual they are with you? We need to be professional with them at all times. We don't have the job yet. We don't know them. We don't know how things work. We keep it up here. We're dressed nicely. We're writing appropriately. You show me in the chat. Thank you, Desiree. Thank you, Allison. Annika, make sure you capitalize that yes. The first word of the sentence is capitalized. Otherwise, it looks great. And I would also say, Logan, let's try not to use multiple exclamation points. Let's try to use one at most. Too many could be viewed as just a little too excited. These are the little things that employers might think. And I know they seem minor to all of us, but how we come across in writing is often how they view us before they even meet us. And I appreciate Jennifer reiterated the time. It could happen that the person meant to write 10 a.m. And when you write back with 11, they say, oh, actually, I meant 10. So being as clear as we can in our messaging makes us look more professional, more ready for that job. So I want to thank all the students who submitted their quick sentences. This is a very brief, what I call English for the real world. Because teachers, raise your hand. Do you believe that how the employer reads the student's email may be the first impression and how they think of that student before they even meet? So how we write to people directly impacts the opportunities we can achieve and attain. So we have to think very carefully about all of our words, lowercase everything, abbreviations. It holds us back. We look like we're not ready. Ms. Katz, if you were fielding, you're fielding emails from students all the time. Do you appreciate when the student takes the time to write complete sentences or put their full thought in the message instead of a lot of shorthand?
Yeah, definitely. Especially if I'm trying to figure out what they're actually trying to say. It's sometimes difficult when it's not a fully well thought out sentence.
Exactly.
There have been times
Exactly.
where I've been like, I'm not sure what you're trying to
Right.
say.
So you have to write back and say, what do you mean? Or you're like, I'll
Yeah.
deal with that later. Because it's just like, I don't know what you're trying to say to me. And even in our minds, it's so clear as we're writing it, but to the other person, it's like, I just don't know exactly what you're trying to say. We'll take a couple more questions from our list. We have so many great questions today. I want to thank everyone for their questions, and then we'll do a little wrap up. Well, Simone McLean from North Mech High School says, have you ever thought about going to a higher level? Or are you happy where you are at Bishop Ireton?
I'm really happy at the high school level. I've have clinical experience at a lot of different levels, from semi-pro internships to Division I to Division III. I really like the high school level. I like every day is different. I have a lot of athletes. I get to be kind of a cool person in a high schooler's life, where I'm not someone that they have to, I'm not like a teacher, I'm not a coach. I get to kind of be a neutral adult in high schoolers' lives. So I really love the high school level.
That's an interesting answer. I see what you're saying. You're like kind of over here. You know,
Yeah.
you're not acquiring assignments. You're not doing, you're just there to help with something they already enjoy doing. We have a question from Gavin Barr, Penta Career Center, Perrysburg, Ohio. When you first got into the field, was there any point where you thought this isn't right for me, but you had hesitations, but you just kept kind of pushing through? Were there tough moments where you questioned, like, is this what I really want to do?
I'd say yes. Being an athletic trainer can be a really thankless job. For example, when a team wins the Super Bowl on Sunday, you're not going to hear them thank their athletic trainer for keeping them healthy.
Right. Right. You don't hear that.
So it can be thankless, and it can be hard when you're putting a lot of work in and it's kind of brushed over or not recognized. It can be frustrating.
Okay. And thinking back on your training and your classes, what were some of the classes you were most grateful that you took? You look back on certain courses like, that one was worth it, I still use it today.
So outside of my required athletic training courses, I was a exercise and sports psychology minor. And my senior year, I took a counseling in exercise and sport. And that is probably the class that I use the most every day.
And which aspects of that class do you use today? You see what I just did, everybody? What did I just do? Can someone tell me in the chat, what am I doing right now? She said, that class has some of the best lessons that I use today. So I said, what are some of those lessons? What is that called? It's a F follow-up question, right? Go ahead, Ms. Katz. Thank you, Allison. Go ahead.
A lot of it's learning how to listen and how to hear what someone's saying. And if someone is telling something, in confidence to you, how to be able to respond appropriately and how to encourage the conversation, things like that.
That's interesting, because you're treating injuries, but you're treating people.
Yeah.
So learning how to deal with people is just as important. If you're not nice to be around, they're going to not want to run and see you as quickly. They're going to try and figure out another way to deal with it. I don't want to deal with Miss Katz. She's, so it's like they say, it's like bedside manner as in the medical profession, knowing how to deal with people. I think that's really great. We're going to take, I'm going to do a quick screen share for the instructors who came in a little bit after we started. Okay. So we can share the resources one more time. So again, if you missed this at the beginning, we put together a free Google Drive folder on exercises for how to handle failure, how to respond when you don't land the job, how to reply back to people who don't answer you, asking for feedback, telling your story of overcoming obstacles for cover letters, how you look to others and improving your public speaking, all for free in a Google Drive folder to share in your class and around your building. Also an online presentation checklist for how to give effective online presentations. It's a one sheet with some quick hit ideas to keep by the computer or in the classroom. If you didn't request this material yet and you're new to the Rubin community and you're an educator, this is not for students, for educators, please type the word interested in the chat right now with your email address. As I said before, if you're new to our community, we will send you an invite for tomorrow, most likely, or the day after, for a brief 5-minute call to pass along the resources and help you make sense of it in your classroom. Because we're in a lot of different CTE courses, high school, college courses today. We want to help you make sense of it for your students. So please look out for that invite. If the time does not work, just reply back with another time. It's no problem at all. Finally, we have our virtual internship series continuing in 2 weeks, February 23rd, the world of dentistry, talking to a dentist who not only treats people and looks inside their mouths all day, but he also runs his own practice. So we get to hear from both sides of that occupation. Okay. And also, if you're watching this on a recording, you can still receive our free resources. Send us an email at the email in red. And finally, everyone who came live today will get a certificate for being here. Teachers, you can type your student's name in the certificate right above the date, so you can customize it for them. So look out for that in your email on Wednesday morning. We will get it to you, and you can put it in an e-portfolio, put it up in the hallway, in the classroom, wherever you want to show you are here with us today. Now, let me return back to our guests one final time. First of all, I want to thank the students and teachers for fantastic questions. Every time we go into a different occupation, it's clear there are students here who are really interested in going into this occupation. So hearing from you, Ms. Katz, really does help. Imagine you're standing, because you're standing in a room right now with high school students, college students who want to be in your shoes. So give us some final advice about how they should go ahead and kind of get themselves started today.
Stop.
Oh, I think she had a student come in. It's real life. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just got walked in on.
Yeah, hey, it's real. This is live. Go ahead.
I'd say reach out to your school's athletic trainer. A lot of us love teaching, and they'll really be able to give you insight in their day-to-day and what it's really like in the nitty-gritty.
That's a great idea. I mean, the person you might want to do that job, they might be in your building right now.
Yeah.
And you may not even play sports or see them day to day, but walk down the hall.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is such a great life skill, and I hope teachers will agree, to give students the confidence to walk down the hall, knock on the door and say, can I ask you a few questions? Can I watch you? Can I observe? That type of being a self-advocate. Do we have teachers in here who want to teach advocacy, self-advocacy for our students, to have the confidence to say, can you teach me? Can I learn from you? And you're saying, like, that's a great point. You don't have to go across town. It could be, right down the hallway. That person is right there, which is unique, because most jobs you have to go, out in the community and find them. This person's like right there. So that's really, really good advice. As we wrap up, I want to thank all of you for being here. Can we get a show of hands, some virtual hands up as a applause for our special guest? I thought she gave phenomenal advice, really gave us the inside look at this job today, what's required today, how to go about it. Thank you to Mr. Dublin for all of his efforts. Thank you, Alexis and our team, for helping out in the chat. I hope that we will see everybody for the dentistry session, still staying in the healthcare medical field a little bit that day. And we have several more sessions in March and April and May, including entrepreneurship, the service industry, banking. So we have a lot more conversations to come. I thought today was fantastic. So thank you again to our special guest. And we will see all of you on February 23rd. Have a great day.